Hello everyone, I'm Emily, the Project Director of PV Operations and Financial Strategies 2020. I'm here today with Michael Iman, the Managing Director from Origis Services for a fireside chat. Origis Services delivers the promise of clean energy with operations and maintenance and asset management services for solar and energy storage across North America. The team manages a diverse utility scale and distributed generation portfolio with experienced solar professionals backed by the state-of-the-art Remote Operations Center located at its headquarters in Austin, Texas. This fireside chat is run in conjunction with the PV Operations and Financial Strategies Conference, November 12th and 13th. So if you'd like to hear more about what Michael has to say, please register. So over to you, Michael, going to the first question. What are the biggest challenges when managing solar assets?
Yeah, Emily, thanks. It's I think it's hard to sort of zero in on what the biggest challenge is. I think from the operations perspective, I think the biggest challenge that I see today is managing assets in accordance with the performance, both financial and production expectations that came through the system as the systems were being designed, built, financed, and turned over. And it really comes down to, as an operator, the things that we control are uptime on the equipment. We control preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance, getting people out there. But often when you have sort of design level issues or you have modeling level issues, particularly the weather models in complex weather environments like Southeastern United States, where you start to see deviations from what's expected from the plant, a lot of pressure comes back on the operators to improve the performance of those facilities. And so the challenge we often have is we have to operate and run the facilities as they sit, meaning as they actually have, exist in real life. We don't get a chance to weigh in on the model and the stuff upstream. And sometimes there's a bit of a delta there that we cannot control. And so that's a constant pressure to perform for operators and asset managers that sometimes is achievable and sometimes is not.
Great, thank you. So the next question is, how will the solar PV industry weather the storm of a global pandemic?
Yeah, I think everybody needs power. People have this irrational belief that when they walk into their house or their office and they flip on the switch, the lights come on, right? They expect the refrigerator to stay cool, right? And so, the power industry is going to continue to grow. I think for this period of disruption, maybe there's a little bit of a backstep. A lot of the corporate power has decreased requirements, but all in all, as far as the demand, I don't see any of that changing or the general direction of the industry, which is moving towards growth. I think the biggest challenge we see, at least, is maintaining oversight on those facilities, because by definition, solar facilities have far less people than typical thermal or other types of power. The number of people is just less compared to the amount of megawatts produced. And so we don't have a problem with having too many people close in or having to separate them. Typically, when I have two people working on a facility that's 400 acres, they can each take 200 acres and keep apart from each other for the most part, right? Or they can back each other up, just keep some distance, and it's not a problem. But we do have issues with not being able to travel to those sites. So normally where we would go through there and we would oversee operations, that has been impacted. And so much like all the other industries that rely on travel, that piece has been impactful. But all in all, I think we can sustain operations quite well. I think the industry, at least my end of it, is fairly resistant to that structurally, and so I don't see a lot of disruption.
Great, well, that's good to hear. So what technologies are there to look out for in solar at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit biased in this regard because I'm one of the people that's sort of driving some of these changes. So if you look at in the life of these projects, about a third of your costs are going to be preventive maintenance, about a third is corrective, and anywhere from a third to as much as a half or more will be in areas that are ancillary services. And for those doing math, I realize I just said a half and there was 2/3 already there, but adjust it, you know what I'm saying? So the ancillary services are things like panel washing, mowing, security services, things like that. They tend to be things that are very highly driven by man hours, right? Very man hour specific. And so automation in that space is one of the remaining large levers that we can pull as an industry to continue to drive down the cost of operations over time, because the preventive maintenance isn't going to change. The corrective maintenance, which is largely parts and break fix, that's not something that you can automate. But when you look at like fully autonomous artificial intelligence mowing and panel washing systems, there are companies out there. One that I started myself, or Newbot, is out there producing, really bringing forward, some really good autonomous mowing systems. And it's not sexy, like mowing the grass doesn't seem like a big problem, but it is. I mean, when it can make up to half of your annual OPEX budget, it's a big problem. It's something you have to fix. If you're in desert environments and high dust, washing panels can be half or more of your annual OPEX. And so those areas where if you can automate and you can get away from really having, large teams of people out in the field, then you can really move the needle from a cost perspective, and that innovation can have a real impact on the cost of solar, which then can help to drive its growth.
Great. So when looking at the solar market as a whole, what do you feel most optimistic about at the moment?
I think, look, it's interesting. In 2012, we used to talk about like what states or what countries we were going to reach parity on from a cost perspective and when. And every single one of our projections have been wrong to the growth side. So now we're in a situation where at most places in the world, solar produces very competitive power, even in places that you would think it doesn't make any sense, like London or Germany or England or Germany, where you've got a lot of cloud cover. Suddenly solar is competitive. So you take that combined with the advances that are happening with battery technology, where you're getting better and better density and better reliability, and those two things together are really going to revolutionize this space. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about looking forward to like 2050, which seems a long way off, but we're at this moment in time where you have a transformation in our society: transportation, Internet of Things, data management, AI, robotics, autonomous, vehicles and activities, and renewable power. That by the time we hit 2050, half of the world's power will be renewable, and it'll be largely as a result. Actually, half will be solar. It'll be largely a result of that combination of low cost solar and really high efficient low cost battery systems, which allow renewables to no longer to be a spinning reserve like traditional power has been for so long. And so that combination, the change in batteries, the availability of information, all these things are happening at the same time. And by the middle of this century, our world day to day will look very different.
Great. Well, yeah, that sounds wonderful. So how is Origis Services playing an active role in driving solar energy forward to make it this most reliable form of energy?
Yeah. Well, Origis Energy as a whole is a developer, right? And developers are always out on the edge, sort of pushing like, what's the next product? What do we need to do to hit to compete for the next PPA? So, and the next, how do we get that next interconnect? How do we put that next plant out there? And so, we're actively pursuing battery storage technologies and driving the growth of that. We have a dedicated team that's doing just that and focusing on that and pairing that both in a combined with solar and even on a standalone basis. And so, and then that, flows through the system and it ends up in operations over time. So the efforts that the people are making in Origis Energy today to really move the industry forward, we'll see those projects flush through in about 2 years. They'll start turning over to us and we'll start operating them. So what we're seeing today really on the operations side is reflective of the projects and things that were put together a couple of years ago. And because there's that delay, right? Because it takes about 2, sometimes 3 years for big projects to go from early development all the way to reality, right? And so those investments that Origis Energy are making today will really start to see bear fruit in 2022, 2023. And I think that's happening all across the industry. So I don't think we're unique in that regard, but we're definitely one of the groups that's out there pushing that edge.
Great. So what can attendees expect to learn in your panel at this year's conference?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's to some degree, it depends on the questions that are asked, right? We tend to really focus, I do personally, certainly, and Origis Services does as a whole, on transparency and responsibility, accountability, really. People talk about honesty and they talk about values and everything else, but without transparency, that stuff is meaningless. And so what we're sort of pushing on, and what I think they'll hear from us is that, we're underpricing O&M, right? So the models are not contemplating the real costs of operating these systems over time. And it's really important that we're really honest about that so that we can get everything where it needs to be. And this is not an effort for, on behalf of a contract holder to increase the value of the contracts. It's really an effort to get that feedback on what actually needs to happen in the field, and the experience that we're seeing with these plants, and to put it into, the contracting, financing phase of operations in a way that makes sense for everybody. Because a lot of promises are made upstream. We used to talk about the promise of solar, right? That promise of low cost, clean power, right? Those promises are delivered in the life of these projects during the operational phase. And I think it's really important that we as an industry make sure that we can make those promises and we can keep those promises. And so that is, you're going to hear that refrain sort of over and over again throughout different aspects of the operations and asset management business, both from me and from the other folks here at Origis Services and at Origis Energy as well.
Great. Well, I'm sure it's going to be a really good panel. And if you all want to hear more from Michael, and as he said, ask questions with the live Q&A function, then please join us at the virtual event, November 12th and 13th. And then for more details, please check out the website at Reuters Events, PV Operations and Financial Strategies. Huge thank you to Michael today for having that chat with us. It's been really, really interesting, and I'm looking forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, ask hard questions. I'm happy to answer hard questions. All right.
Great.
Thanks for the time.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.